Welcome to the Build Better Blueprint, the podcast where we discuss the foundations of real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. Join Christian Cardamone as he shares insights, strategies, and stories that will empower you to level up your business, your lifestyle, and your impact. Let's build a better blueprint for success, starting now.
Thanks for tuning in. This is the Build Better Blueprint. I'm Christian Cardamone. I'm your host. And today, guys, I've got a real treat for you. I've got Mr. Chase Calhoun. Chase is a real estate investor, developer, husband, father, and Ironman athlete driven by faith, discipline, and a mission to help others grow through smart investing and relentless personal development. It's my kind of people. Chase started his journey in the San Francisco Bay Area working in law enforcement and insurance, but always knew he was meant for something more. And after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad at 15, he became obsessed with real estate. Years later, he took a leap of faith, moving across the country with his wife, stepson, and dog to Little Rock, Arkansas, where he bought his first property sight unseen and lived in it while doing a full gut remodel. What started as a rough beginning turned into a powerful foundation, and today Chase runs multiple businesses across real estate, construction, and property management, and is passionate about sharing what he's learned to help others grow in life, business, and mindset. So welcome to the show, Chase. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's my pleasure. Thanks for being on here, and I was stoked to get the opportunity to chat with you today because we were talking offline a minute ago. I'm also in construction, development, property management, all these things. So we've got a lot in common, except you live in the middle of the country. I live on the coast, but you started on the West Coast in like the two craziest industries, the most probably boring one, which is insurance, and then the most exciting one, which is law enforcement. So yeah, man. And then so now you're in the middle geographically. Tell us a little bit about your start, where you came from and how you got to where you are today so we can introduce you to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm from San Francisco Bay Area. Originally, I moved about 8 years ago to Little Rock, Arkansas, which is where we're based and will likely stay for at least the immediate future. I had wanted to get into real estate investing in the San Francisco Bay Area back in 2008, 2009, 2010, when everything crashed. You could actually buy houses there and rent them out for amount of monies that made sense. Unfortunately, I let other people talk me out of it. I had a lot of family members that were in real estate, and everybody's like, no, you don't want to buy these crappy little houses in the East Bay Area for $100,000. It's just tenants are a pain and it's going to go down again. And, hindsight. 2020, I should have bought everything I could get my hands on because those $100,000 houses are worth like, $600,000-$700,000 nowadays.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you still talk to those family members?
If I had a crystal ball, I would have listened, to what knew I should have been doing back then, but I didn't. So again, fast forward several years, I really realized that I was ready and wanted to start investing in real estate, but it didn't make sense anymore in California. Like, stuff didn't cash flow. If you bought something there, again, hindsight being 2020, I'm sure there would have been plenty of appreciation run up. But I started looking at that time. I was working in the insurance industry and started looking in other places where I could move out of state. Real estate investing is like this big, like sexy thing that everybody's wanted to do the last couple of years, but it was not Main Street back then. Like people were doing it, I'm sure, and it was something that has been around for years, but it just wasn't very mainstream back then. So I made the decision to move to Little Rock just to start investing in real estate.
Wow. So you did that strictly just to go down that path? I mean, that's commitment, dude. Did you have like a plan, like a blueprint that you kind of mapped out strategically, or were you like, let me just get here and then go from there?
No, looking back, and especially where my life's at today and how things have gone, like I wish I could say that I spent all this time and made this strategic decision and picked Little Rock and everything went as planned. And we got very blessed and very lucky. This is just kind of where we ended up, and it worked out really well for us. I literally, at the time I was working a commercial insurance job, and I made the decision I was going to do it. And I called a company that I used to work for I knew they were contract based and they were all over the United States. And I said, hey, where can you guys send me and pay me the same amount of money that you're paying me in the Bay Area? But it's cheaper to live. They were like, well, don't you want to stay in California, or how about LA or Dallas or Houston? Hindsight being 2020, like Florida was one of them. That probably wouldn't have been a horrible choice. But one of them they threw out was Little Rock, Arkansas. And I said, I don't know anything about it, but let me hop on Zillow and see how much houses cost and how much they rent for. And I jumped on Zillow and saw you could buy like $30,000 houses, and they rented out for like $800. And I was sold.
Beautiful.
And so we literally bought our first house sight unseen from California, and it was a little bit of a mess, but we packed up and moved into that first house. We bought it sight unseen. and then literally camped out in it while we fixed it up. And that was our first rental. I still own that rental today. And we've obviously grown quite a bit since then.
Geez, man. Yeah. Talk about, I mean, you must have been if you're making Bay Area money living in Little Rock, I mean, what a great tailwind to have when you get there. And whether you give yourself credit or not, you were semi-strategic in it. If you're trying to at least figure out where can I go to where I can stretch my dollar the farthest and get real estate at the best value. So Little Rock, it is, sounds like. So tell us then, you're in Little Rock. What gets you from working in commercial insurance into working for yourself or building this portfolio? I want folks to understand kind of the trajectory of that to where you are now and kind of what you're owning and operating.
Yeah, it was a slow grind to start. I mean, it was like one kind of project property at a time. So we did that first one, and then we realized very quickly that we ended up in a neighborhood that we didn't want to live long term. Part of the dangers of buying something sight unseen in an area you know nothing about. So it didn't take very long for us to realize we didn't want to live there long term. And so we got that first house fixed up, and then we found another one in a much more desirable part of town and bought that next house and moved into that, kind of did the same thing with that first one. So again, right out of the gate, it was just, I was really I was working, trying to make as much money as I could and then just roll as much as that into investing. And I tell people it changes a lot. Like when we first moved, my goal was to buy a couple rental properties over the course of 10 years and say that if I lost my job, I would still be able to survive. That was that initial goal when we moved and decided to start investing in real estate. That's changed dramatically along the way. So it's turned into a totally different thing since then. But it was early on. It was just working as much as possible, trying to make as much money as possible and do as many deals as I could along the way. It wasn't until several years down the road, as I got farther into this, we started managing, our own projects as the general contractor, more out of necessity than anything else. Got my real estate license along the way and started helping a few people here and there buy and sell investment real estate, just the same thing, make a little bit of extra money and dumping it all into the real estate investing. And it was several years later, I joined GoBundance. This time I was working for a big insurance company. It was it was a decent paying job and it took very little of my time. The final straw kind of was for me. I was getting ready to head out to a GoBundance event with a bunch of successful guys. And I emailed my boss at the time, said, I'm going to be gone for the week, but I'll get all my stuff done remotely. And he said, hey, sorry, I can't technically give you the time off because you're out of vacation. It was kind of that really accelerated the time for me to leave.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, enough's enough. I think it's time to make that jump. And so it's through, hanging out with some guys and getting challenged a little bit on one sheets and stuff like that, that I kind of said, if this happens, then I'm going to make the jump and go full time. And it's been kind of running ever since.
Dude, that's amazing. I love that it's so ironic too, that you were on your way to a self-improvement, self-development, mentorship group event. And then a tentacle comes to try to pull you back in from the W-2. And then you just use that as your opportunity to jump ship and then go out on your own. What was that experience like?
It was still tough. I tell people, I mean, it was like sitting around with a bunch of guys and again, digging into it a little bit. And they were just like, hey, this is stupid. You shouldn't be working this job still. You'll do way better off if you can separate yourself from it. And and it was like, hey, what would need to happen for you to feel comfortable making that jump? And it was like, well, if I could put 1 year's worth of salary, I think, in the bank, I'd probably feel comfortable doing that. And so it's amazing how kind of quickly that happened. I made that leap. It was still tough. I mean, it was a job the insurance job I had, it ended up in a roundabout way helping me a lot today where I'm at, trying to grow a construction company, because it was very technical stuff that we deal with a lot on the construction side. But it was still tough to make that jump. I think having that safety net of a salary and that safe job, it's something that's hard for people to leave. But again, once I made the decision to quit that, go full time in real estate and now construction, it's been very good for me.
That's great, man. I'm stoked for you. That's that's the dream. It's not like there's anything wrong with the W-2 or working for a boss, but I think for those folks that do it and enjoy it, more power to them. But to the folks that do it, don't enjoy it and know they were meant to do something different, I wouldn't say more or better, but just something different, crossing that threshold and taking that leap like you did can be the hardest thing. So kudos to you, man. I think it's awesome though that you had the support you couldn't have asked for a better group of cheerleaders to help you through that transition, I imagine. So tell me right now, what your thoughts are on the power of coaching and mentorship. And if you think, you could have done that without GoBundance or some group like that, how has that been attributed to your success?
I think it's been super impactful for me. And I honestly don't know that I'd be where I'm at today without being in rooms with guys like that and just seeing guys that are farther along, in all different aspects of life, right? Not just money and business, family and fitness and all these other things, seeing them do it and then just kind of in a way, I guess, realizing that they're no different than I am. And if it's kind of like whether it's conscious or subconscious, just, hey, if they can do it, there's no reason why I can't either. And even looking back to where I was at then compared to now, it's been, a substantial amount of progress since then. And it continues to be because I surround myself around guys who are, maybe playing at a slightly higher level than me, which is, it's intimidating, right? And sometimes it's tough to be around them because they'll make you feel like you're not doing anything, especially some of them. But it's
Yeah.
like it draws you forward. And you got to balance. You got to be careful. I try to remind myself sometimes we've got a lot going on right now, but not compared to some of my friends, right? Especially in groups like Go Abundance. And so you got to be careful with that. Make sure you're not beating yourself up too hard, but it really pulls you up forward. Same thing. I mean, coaching and stuff. That's not something I think Go Abundance has been more helpful to me than anything else. But I think you can do the same thing with coaches or people that can mentor you and pull you up. It's very similar.
Yeah, I like that. And you have like a differentiation between coaching and mentorship or just being part of like a mastermind group because there are different like veins in the self-development and improvement kind of industry or world, whatever. But I love the fact that you can affiliate with this mastermind that you and I are a part of, Go Abundance. I like it because I want to push myself by being in the room with guys who are like my dreams are their realities. They're already doing these things. And so it's really the delicate dance though, like you said, is comparison is the thief of joy, right? So you can't compare your year 1 to their year 10 or 20, or just their whatever they're doing in their market or with their resources. I love the support that you get because if you're sitting down and we're in a workshop and we're doing something and there's a guy next to me who's, I'm 45. The last event I went to, they're talking to a couple guys that were under 30 that make 10x what I make, and I do well. And it's like, all right, and we're collaborating. And that's the coolest thing about that. I think there's not a lot of ego. There's ego everywhere, but not this group is great, man. This isn't like the Go Abundance sales pitch for anyone, but it's definitely been a great experience for me. So I like to hear that it has been for you as well. Let me pivot for a second and just ask you about your day-to-day now. So what are you working on? I know you're in construction and real estate investment. You have over 75 units that you guys own and manage now?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so I always tell people we have a real estate investment company and a full service construction company. I also am a licensed broker and we do some property management, although a majority of that is internal stuff. The real estate investment company is mainly like a heavy rehab properties. When we first got started, it was mainly these really heavy remodel projects that we do. So we buy heavily distressed or heavily damaged properties, do these full renovations on them, and then try to keep as many of them for rental properties as possible. We've shifted a little bit more recently, and I think we're going to continue to push towards is ground up new construction, build to rent. So we're building a lot of what we're building right now is for just new construction rental properties. And then it's just shifted and morphed over time. Like it's like earlier on, it was, I was helping people buy stuff and then I was buying stuff and I would help them renovate it. And I would renovate mine and then we'd help them manage it and manage ours. We've really started to separate them off. So the construction company is becoming its own kind of stand-up entity that it's really like a standalone business doing. Part of the projects we're doing are internal for our real estate investment company. We treat them just like a customer project, just at a reduced fee. And then we're doing a decent amount of ground up new construction, mainly for either other investors or we're doing a lot of them for turnkey rental companies who you talked about building like a threeplex and or triplex and selling it. We're building a lot of like small single family and duplexes for these turnkey companies. And as soon as they're finished, they're turning around and selling them to their customers or pre-selling them. I think everything we've had under construction all year has been sold like before we even started construction on it.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is wild. It's been a good little niche. And then we're doing a few, custom homes for people and a commercial project and stuff like that. We're looking as of this weekend, actually, or today, we're going to be putting some land under contract for like some bigger build-to-rent projects. The goal is to shift more into larger scale kind of build-to-rent projects as we move forward. We're building out a really good team to be able to handle a larger scale construction.
And are you guys doing this like with investor capital, or is this just all your own money that you have with your any partners you may or may not have?
Yeah, to date, it's all just kind of my own capital. And so again, the customer construction projects, that's a nice, like a little breath of fresh air because we get to like use somebody else's money along the way a little bit, make some
Yeah.
as well. But everything we've been doing has been just my own capital. There is like one situation where we're doing a commercial project. We're doing a self-storage and it's like a small retail center. We bid that for a friend of mine. He was buying in, just wanted us to do this construction project. And it was like, hey, do you want to buy in and be a partner on it? So I ended up buying
Uh-huh.
into that, but it's not my deal that somebody else's partner is kind of flip flop. So we're doing the construction project, but it's really his deal that I partnered in on. So I'm not,
Nice.
it's actually nice because I'm not involved in the management of it. And self-storage seems like it would be a little bit of a headache to lease up. Yeah, to date, one of the bigger build-to-rent projects we're looking at, we'll probably do a partnership on something like that. But no, we haven't raised outside capital. Not saying we wouldn't, and we may in the future, but it's just I've stayed away from it. I tried to wrap
Mhm.
my head around the whole syndication model the last couple of years with apartments, and I just couldn't get it to. I couldn't get it to pencil for myself and how it made sense. Again, hindsight looking back, I'm very glad I didn't go down that road because
Yeah.
I don't think it did make sense. And even then I didn't see the rates going up as quickly as they did. And so I'm glad I kind of stayed away from that, although I wouldn't be opposed to doing it in the future.
Yeah, that's one thing that there's where like a lot of the chickens have come home to roost for that syndication thing where everybody was jumping into it over the last 5 years, and now a lot of these notes are due or maturing, and it's like no one underwrote for 7-8%. And then if you have to get bridge debt or something like that, or like mezzanine, and then it's like 9 or 10 or 11, these things they no one fathomed it would be like that. So which is crazy to me. I mean, but it was the lowest it's ever been in the history that we've ever even been tracking these things through the pandemic. So, it happened. It is what it is. But the syndication model is weird. I've toyed with that as well because they say, eventually you run out of your own money. You can do it all. Everyone would like to do it on their own and not have partners. And then at a certain point, you generally run out of your own money or you just don't want that exposure. So you want to bring in partners and or investors. And the syndication model is sometimes you look at one and it's like so simple, and then sometimes you look at them and they're so complex. And it just seems like the way I look at it is like you make your acquisition fee. We could do that as brokers still and not have to mess with the syndication. We could dispose of it still through that same avenue. And then if you're just waiting to own a small percentage of it and you're doing all the work, it's just like another job. You're just dealing with a real estate asset. So it's like a really long flip or a really long lease up or something. So it never really got me, super hot and bothered.
It's tough. I mean, time will tell, right? I mean, I've been to a bunch of events where everybody in there pretty much is raising capital for big deals. My real
Mhm.
estate investment portfolio is smaller, but it's 100% owned by me. I always joke around. I mean, we still raise capital. It's just we raise money from the banks. The equity injections always from me. But curious to see moving forward. I don't see any reason to change that unless it's more strategic partnerships. So I'm going to partner with maybe one person or two
Totally.
and or just keep pushing as hard as we can with our own capital.
Yeah. So, and is the goal do you have an exit? Like, is it bundle this all up at some point and dispose of the whole portfolio, or and then just have you thought about that yet, or is that still are you just kind of in the trenches right now, still building?
I mean, I think for right now, I'm still in the trenches building. I mean, obviously, I have goals and I set goals, financial goals and stuff like that. But I'm much more of a big proponent of being in this for the long game. And I think the goal for me is just to continue to play the game and build it as big as I can and not worry so much. I think where I've seen a lot of people the last couple of years get themselves in trouble and or not really be in business anymore. They're just trying to make money quick and trying to get that quick, build something up and exit or build something up and sell it. And I just don't think I have that same approach. I joked around when I first started doing this a little bit. It's like I want to be able to retire by the time I'm 40 and I'll be 40 next year. And if I really wanted to, I could probably retire. No interest in doing that. So I might as well just continue to build and run up the score and see where it goes and make as big of an impact as I can. And again, just see what happens with it. We will as I start to look at scaling the construction company, especially the construction
Mhm.
company, I will continue to try to build that in a way where it would be sellable. But again, not really trying to build construction companies are probably hard to sell. And so not that I'd want to build it and sell it, but if anything, maybe build it and do an ESOP or something where it's like sold to the employees of the company type deal. But the portfolio itself, it's like everything's, I don't really want to sell anything. And I hate whenever I do sell something, but it's always also kind of for sale. It's just whatever we make, it's going to get rolled into more projects type deals. So
Yeah. Every time you dispose of something, you're setting yourself up to get involved into something a little bit bigger. But that's the path that we've chosen. That's the fun part about it, right, man? I mean, That's why we're doing this. So I'm curious because you always hear about these big funds like BlackRock and Blackstone, and all that stuff doing these big build to rents. Are they like in your market? Is that, are you guys technically like the Rust Belt, or how do you define your market, and how is your market right now with players like that?
Yeah. So Arkansas, I mean, if people call Arkansas like a flyover state, it's definitely, it's a tertiary market. So it's not a huge market. It seems to me like it's growing more than people even realize. I think you got a lot of people chasing affordability. And so I think
Yeah.
Arkansas is somewhere that's still probably one of the most affordable places to live in the U.S.
Well, give us an example real quick of like what a single family home trades for there, like an average
Yeah. So
median
like
price.
my house is a custom built, nothing crazy, but a very nice custom built 2,300 square foot home in a very nice neighborhood part of town. It'd probably sell for $500,000. Where I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, that same home in the same type of neighborhood would probably sell for $2.2 million. So just
Wow.
when you look at it,
Yeah.
affordability like that, I think there's still a lot of room for places like Arkansas to grow.
Mhm.
When we moved, people were like, our family gave us a hard time. They thought we were crazy for moving to Arkansas. It's just, I always joke around. I think people from places like California, they think of Arkansas, they think of like the Moonshiners TV show or something.
Yeah, totally,
If you
dude.
get
Yeah.
in different parts of the state, there's definitely a little bit of that around, but it's not Little
Yeah.
Rock where we're at is a very nice kind of diverse city. It is still behind the times. And so I joke around. I think sometimes it's 20 years behind the times compared to some of these bigger cities. When you talk about just like activities and restaurants and things like that. So I think it's still got a lot of room to grow, but it's a nice, a nice place to be, especially to buy. It's definitely more affordable. As far as
Mhm.
institutional level players, there was a lot of them. They were coming into the market a couple of years ago, mainly on single SFR, single family rentals. So they were coming in trying to just snap up as many rental properties as they could, but all scattered site. There's only one or two people that I know of that are doing build to rent subdivisions in central Arkansas, maybe different parts of Arkansas, but only central Arkansas. Most of them are smaller, family office type things. There's not a lot of institutional money that's ran to central Arkansas yet. Not to say that wouldn't happen down the road. And it's probably more of a, nobody's put a project that could perform on it. So that would probably be the hardest thing the institutional guys would struggle with in Arkansas.
Yeah, I remember reading an article. It's probably been 2 years though. It was kind of maybe three before things really started to show signs of cooling, where like some of those big institutional players were showing up into tertiary markets all across the country and just buying, like literally buying everything in the MLS.
Yeah.
Where there's just like just a handful of couple thousand units where they could go in and just absorb the entire market just for buy to rent, and then they were in with land. Even with that, it's like things like that happening are insane. I can't imagine that must devastate a market, not necessarily in a good way or a bad way, but just, or maybe disrupt is the word, like so. Uh, it's just crazy to see things like that happening.
So they were definitely here doing that a couple years ago.
Hmm.
And I always tell people, I have no crystal ball. And it's like when I talk to people who are like, well, I don't want to invest right now because things don't cash flow. One thing I have noticed is I think a couple years ago, like in central Arkansas, there was a lot of demand with first time home buyers, like just think young people who wanted to buy their first home, but they couldn't because they were getting beat out by these big institutional. I mean, those institutional guys would literally have agents write an offer on every single house that hit the MLS. And it's like, they're going to offer 10% below list, negotiate to here, and then they'll close in 2 weeks. And it's just hard to compete with that. So they're getting beat out. These first time home buyers were getting beat out by that back then. And then fast forward a couple of years, the rates jumped up. And so now they no longer could afford that same house that they were looking at. So I think you have a lot of pent up probably demand with these people that are sitting on the sidelines and not really being able to buy anything. We were at a build to rent conference a couple months ago, and they showed like statistics on a lot of these institutional players. They went from like, it was something like, whatever, 10 to 15% of transactions were them. They've really cooled off the last couple of years. So they've just been sitting and waiting to see what happens, I think. So they're down to like 3 or 4% of transactions are institutional level. And
Hmm.
I just don't think they're very active right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't ramp back up at some point in the future.
So what's for the listeners who don't know, how would you define like a build to rent versus what's the benefit of build to rent versus if you could buy just a house turnkey in your market? Is it just because it's a younger, newer product with longer duration for all the major systems, or is there a benefit to build to rent versus just buying something existing?
Yeah. So I first heard of it several years ago. The first 2 build to rents that we did were like 4 years ago. And so I had heard about it. I went to a conference. Actually, a lot of the institutional guys were starting to get involved in it. And I just decided to build 2. I'm going to build 2 new construction houses on infill lots and just see how it goes. And we built two, and we were still doing buying rehab at the same time. And I would say it's a little bit harder to get into when you look at like your cash on, especially today with interest rates, but your cash on cash return is going to be lower because you're going to have less kind of equity in the deal theoretically. But when I look at like those new construction build to rent properties versus, something we bought that was from the 70s, even if we did a full renovation of it, it's just like when you look at stuff like the desirability from the tenants, if you're trying to lease up a home and you got a 30-year-old home or a brand new construction home, I feel like it's easier to lease the brand new home. You make it a little bit higher rent. And then just the maintenance and the CapEx stuff. You got a brand new construction home, theoretically, there should be nothing going wrong with it for a while. And so we still own those first two homes that I did 4 years ago. And it's like, I've had very little or no maintenance costs every year. And so again, it's just kind of fast forward. I did a couple of them, and then I did one a year, and I was doing buying and rehabbing. And it just seems like the last several years, it's just either one or a couple projects a year where we're really good at doing heavy rehabs, but it's like we would just totally miss on the budget. And like now we're way over budget. I'd suck up all this extra cash and I have to wait and try to refinance it. And it was just like headache after headache after headache. Plus I started to scale and I'm bringing on people to help. So like a project manager, and I'm trying to get them to help. But when you're doing these really heavy lift rehab projects, I was constantly getting sucked back in like on a daily basis, have to solve problems. With the new constructions, to me, it's far more scalable. And so we're doing, literally like a couple years ago, I'd be doing one, maybe 2 or 3 projects at a time. We're doing like 25 new constructions at once right now. And although some of the other parts of it are a little bit more and you've done new construction, so I'm sure you've experienced it as well. With that scale, you need more help managing it, more accounting, and some of that back end stuff gets complicated. But as far as like building them, it's just a lot easier to go through that construction project than doing even a medium sized rehab project. In my opinion, it's just more scalable.
Yeah, well, it's just because, they're apples and oranges, really. That's why like tract builders exist, because it's so easy to scale, because by the time you actually get your permits issued, there's really, the only variable is weather, depending on, where you could be. There's other variables, but for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward process and flow chart, of materials, delivery, labor, construct, deliver the finished product. Whereas with a rehab, man, you don't know what you're getting until every day there's something new that can be discovered that could send you on a zig or a zag and a cost here and there. So it's like a mystery box versus a glass box where you can see exactly what you're getting, versus the one where you put your hand in, you don't know, like on Jimmy Fallon's show, you put your hands in, you don't know what the heck you're touching, and then they pull the cloth away and it's freaking snake or something.
We did a lot of big ones. And so when I say heavy rehab, like we have bought properties that were like basically destroyed in fires and had to be completely gutted and rebuilt. And then a couple years ago, I think we went into 2023. My intention going into 2023 was not to buy anything and just wait and see what happened through the market. We had a tornado tear up like a really nice part of Little Rock. And so we ended up going in and buying a ton of properties that were like basically destroyed by the tornado. But because of that experience we had, we were able to go in there and rebuild them. And it still makes sense. Like we were able to force a lot of appreciation or force a lot of equity by taking on those huge projects nobody else wanted to deal with. But again, they're a fight the whole way through, just everything. You just don't know what you're getting into. And again, construction, it's just a lot cleaner, a lot simpler.
So it sounds like that's like build to rent is kind of right now. Is that what you're focusing on? What's your investment thesis right now, personally?
Yeah. So personally, I'm kind of fully focused on build to rent. I think it's tough. It's the hardest to invest that I've ever seen it since again, some guys have been doing this a lot longer than me, but at least for me and my career in this, today is the toughest it's ever been. Build to rent is the one thing that I think still, for me, long-term still makes sense. Again, there's not a ton of cash flow in these deals we're doing, but I'm looking at a long-term play. Like we're forcing that value by doing the construction projects. And as long as it's cash flowing at least a little bit, we're looking at holding it long-term and realizing we can always sell later. We're really, really good at building houses. And if I thought that we could build and sell houses successfully right now, we would definitely be building and selling. But I don't think the sales market, at least where we're at, is very slow. So it's like the guys that are doing it, I think, are just struggling to sell anything and having to do all these concessions. And so we're just gonna keep getting really good at building houses, but do what makes sense, which is building them and renting them. And then again, I think it's like a pendulum. That pendulum's going to swing back at some point. People are going to want to and be ready to buy houses. We'll probably also build and sell. But for right now, it's basically everything we're doing is build to rent. If we do try to do a spec to sell, it's gotta at least barely underwrite or cash flow as a rental, because if we can't sell it, we'll just keep it and rent it.
Okay. And so then, like from a financial model, you put the money into each individual project, you rent it. Is that money tied up there, or are you pulling out after an equity line or something after you've placed a tenant in it, or are you bundling up like 5 or 10 of these and putting commercial debt on them and pulling cash out, or is all your money just parked in these assets?
It gets convoluted, especially with the rates being high like this. It was a lot easier a couple of years ago, but we've got a lot of equity tied up in deals right now for sure. I do try
Yeah.
to, because we've got a lot of experience with it and I feel very comfortable with it. And we've got a portfolio to kind of back it. We'll go heavy as we possibly can on the financing on the front end. So if I can get a bank to do 100% financing or close to 100% financing, which is usually like a 75 or an 75 to 80% LTV, I'll leverage
Mhm.
it like that and go as high as I can on the front end. That way I don't have to refinance it to pull cash back out. It's always harder, at least right now, to get the cash back out once it's built.
Yeah.
I'll leverage it as much as I can on the front end if I know we're going to keep it. And then it depends. Like we had a couple houses. We had 2 houses that we built, ground up new construction that we're going to sell specs, and then a flip that we did like last year under the construction company that didn't sell. They'll all work as rentals. And so we're going through the process right now. We'll bundle a couple of those up together. We'll do a refinance the real estate investment company, pull some cash out if we can, but we'll kind of bundle it like that. So it just depends on what it is. Moving forward, we're going to be working on a build to rent subdivision where we bought the majority of a failed subdivision uh, early last year, I think. We'll be doing build to rent down there. We'll do like commercial debt on those as we build them. Just knowing that our goal will be like in a year and a half or so, 2 years, get the whole subdivision built out. And then we'll do one big takeout refinance and package the whole thing together.
Nice. That'll be awesome. That'll be when the ship comes in. Hopefully, if you guys get something that you get to kind of really see the fruits of your labor, and it's nice because at that point you earned it too. It's not just like a maximum appreciation play, and you get to take out some money and like benefit the market. You actually earned that for the entire time. So I think it's awesome, man. So you got a lot going on. You're building, you're selling, you're developing. Where do you go right now for inspiration, or where you learning? What are you reading, listening to? Stay fresh.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of learning. I learn a lot from podcasts. Like when I'm exercising, I'm almost always listening to some kind of podcast, and it doesn't a lot of real estate stuff or finance stuff, but I also do a lot of just personal development type podcasts. And so and there's a bunch of them that I'm doing there. And then books, I try to read at least, whatever 10 pages a day. And so I kind of cycle through different books. It just depends on, what I'm working on is usually dictates it, or a new book that was recommended to me or whatever. Like I just finished a marriage book that was great, but the book before that was like a high performance, entrepreneur book. And so I'll flip back and forth, and I try to spread learning around a little bit, but a lot of it for me is either reading a little bit a day, but a majority of it's probably listening to podcasts. Bonus, if you can get up to, 1.5 or 2x speaks, you can condense some extra podcast in a
Yeah.
short amount of time.
Yeah, I'm like a 2-speed guy. My brain has been wired to this. And so it's crazy because when I go back and listen to my own podcast, just to make sure that it's after a new episode, I listen to it first before I publish it. And if it's on 2-speed, I'm like, oh, I sound like I know what I'm doing. But if it's on 1-speed, I'm just like, I can't even listen to this. I can't even finish it. I'm going so slow. So my brain has been permanently hardwired.
Yeah. I feel the same way, or I hope like somebody I'll listen to a lot, and then I'll hear them at regular speed. I'm like, God, they talk so slow.
I know, man. It's all good. Awesome, man. Well, tell me this. I got a couple more questions for you as we're wrapping up. Where do you see the biggest opportunities right now in real estate, in in your market or across the country that the entrepreneurs should be looking at and focusing on?
I think it depends at the size, and so like I think it depends. Like if you're where you and I are, I see build to rent is a big opportunity. Again, I think at some point that pendulum is going to swing back the other way. And I think build to sell, there's going to be a lot of opportunity, but I think there's opportunity everywhere for anybody at any, like, I think if I was early on just getting started, like I wish I would have done the whole house hack thing. And I think if you're young and just get started in it with everything being tough right now, with rates being really high, I would say that I think the market's stalled out. And even though some people are still refusing to like negotiate, there's still some really good deals to be had. So just being diligent with them. And then I think a lot of people are just sitting on the sidelines right now. And again, I hope the real estate market doesn't crash too bad, because it's going to like hurt my feelings and my balance sheet a little bit, but it really shouldn't negatively affect stuff too much. But I'm
Yeah.
just not convinced that's going to happen. And so I think there's a lot of people just sitting on the sidelines, and I think they may miss like right now being a good time to buy. If you just get fixated, I mean, a couple years ago, I'd say, well, don't buy anything unless you can get an 8 to 15% cash on cash return. Like that's not really achievable right now. But I think people just sitting on the sideline and not buying anything is also not the right answer. So I'd say just try to pick something and get in where you can at your level, and try to just be in the game and not just sit on the sidelines. You want to have cash reserves, and I think being ready for a good buy opportunity is a great thing to do. But at some point, you still want to try to do deals if you can.
Yeah, that's wise advice there. I think I agree with that on some level. You have to, if you're going to sit on the sidelines and just kind of take stock of the market, you at least better be getting some reps in, or studying, or doing some homework, or taking notes, so you're not just wasting time being idle, because there's players that are making deals in every market. There always will be, always have been. But the best time to buy real estate was, yesterday. Second best time is today. So just get in the game at some level, but you also have to be wise. I wouldn't buy something just for the sake of buying something. It still has to make sense on some level. But if you have different avenues to see a return, if it's, if you can force equity, or you have appreciation, or you have loan pay down, or there's some tax advantages, you have ways to help your underwriting look better, maybe just looking through a different lens. And so I think if you do that, and if you're looking at creative strategies, that's where the opportunity is now, I think. But definitely just sitting on your hands on the sidelines, man, is if you're waiting for a green flag to come up where the pool is open, by the time you hit the water, man, it's going to be dirty. Awesome, man. Why don't you tell us where folks can find you and learn more about you and keep up with you?
Yeah, social media is good. We're trying to do a lot on social media as far as posting videos. So we're on Instagram and YouTube, stuff like that. It's Calhoun.realestate is my Instagram handle. And so we're trying to post as much as we can there now. So that'd be a good place to reach out, connect.
Awesome. That's great, man. Well, any final thoughts or wisdom you want to share with the audience?
No, I don't think I got anything. I appreciate you for having me on. It was great getting to meet you.
Awesome. Yeah, man. You too as well. And hopefully I'll see you at the next event we have in person for GoBundance. And I wish you the best with the empire that you're building out there in Arkansas, man. And thanks for being on the show. So this is Christian Cardamone. That's Chase Calhoun. This is the Build Better Blueprint, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
That's it, folks. That's our show. Thanks as always for listening. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to our channel so you are up to date with the latest episodes. Feel free to share with your friends and keep up the great work. You are on the right path. See you at the top.